We've all most likely watched movies in the past. I'm an old movie buff myself, and sometimes things come up that kind of remind me of a movie. And has anybody here not seen Gone with the Wind? In the end, Scarlett has lost her man, although not to dying like Naomi and Ruth did. She doesn't know where to go. She feels like she has lost all, and she says, well, I'm going to return to Terra. Today, when we speak about Ruth, how her mother-in-law Naomi lost her husbands and her sons, she was also sure not where to go, what to do. She was in a foreign land. Her decision, well, I'll return to my homeland, Bethlehem. The book of Ruth exhibits a vision of an ideal society that concentrates on the fortunes of a family within a small community, probably not unlike the one that we live in. At the center is two women making a deep commitment to each other and to God. They represent the poorest of the poor. These ladies are destitute. They are faithfully living with royal compassion for one another. We see Naomi's feelings of obvious abandonment, certainly anger when her husband and sons have died. And it gets shifted, kind of the gears get shifted to hope and joy. Ruth starts out and it talks about how they end up in the land of the Moabites. Naomi and her husband and her two sons moved there because of the drought in the region, and there was no food to eat, so they went into Moab to live. Her husband died, but she still had her two sons, so there was hope for support there. And her two sons took Moabite women as wives. Now the Moabites were kind of known to be some nasty characters in the past, but the region where they settled was a little more obviously settled. Ruth is a story about God, how he restores to those who look to him in hope. It is about God's covenant faithfulness. Ruth, Naomi, and Boaz are character studies in God's mundane, everyday events. In the lives of people, what covenant faithfulness looks like in return. Ruth shows how God is at work in our average, day-to-day activities that we face. Normal challenges, financial resources, family responsibilities, death, moving to a new area. And in Ruth, we find God weaving a story of redemption out of all these details. Ruth is an outsider, a Moabite. Moabite women were known, or the Moabites themselves, that they worship Baal, and their entanglements with Moabite women, which was rebellion against God after the calf incident. I think we all recall that. But here in this area where Naomi's family settled, the Moabites were generous with their food, intermarrying and demonstrating how ancient enemies can coexist in peace. Ruth trusts and commits to Naomi's people. She makes an offer of marriage to Boaz in an interesting way on the threshing floor, which at the time was considered honorable and not scandalous, but it was not without risk. God honors her integrity and diligence by weaving her into the big story. Boaz was a Judite. He was probably closer in age to Naomi than Ruth. He was a protector, provider, observant, compassionate, and he was known as a man of integrity. They met in the fields. Boaz presents as a man of integrity, principle, and responsibility. He was a pretty much no-nonsense kind of guy. He follows from Leviticus, when you reap, do not reap the edges, or gather gleaning, or strip your vineyards bare, you shall leave them for the poor. God uses Boaz's integrity to save the widow's family, and in the long run there, he becomes an ancestor to the Messiah. Boaz and Ruth had Obed. Obed was the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David. Naomi loses her entire family. Despite these tragedies, God is able to steer Naomi's loss back in restoration. Naomi's plight brings the story of God to the king of David, to Israel. Naomi's previous emptiness is changing to fullness. God's faithfulness is steadfast and unchanging. In the book of Ruth, God takes 10 years to provide bountiful food to a famine-stricken nation. God works through Ruth, a loyal foreigner, to provide for a destitute widow and a prominent member of the community, to provide security and protection for a young widow of foreign descent. By doing so, God's faithfulness is carried out over time and through many individuals. We must remain patient and not lose hope. God's faithfulness is shown likewise in our lives as we seek refuge under the wing of our Lord God. What steps can we take to reflect the paths and ways of Naomi, Boaz, and Ruth? Naomi, a pathway home. Boaz, a pathway to an ancestor of a king. Ruth, she most likely gave up all, even her pathway back to her homeland, when she chose God of Naomi, our God. A lasting decision to follow one true God. In doing so, she probably burned the bridges. But by doing so, she found his purpose. Like Ruth, our purpose in God's eternal kingdom is one decision away. We must stay vigilant with ourselves and ask, where have we gleaned today? And how well have our daily